If you'd asked me 2 months ago whether I'd ever stand at the head of our old oak dining table, clutching a manila envelope like it was my last offense, I'd have laughed. Or maybe I'd have cried. Because no matter how many times I replayed every word I'd said to them, every moment I'd begged them to see me, not the version my sister painted, I kept coming back to the same thing. Family will always choose the lie that comforts them over the truth that splits them apart. My name is Imogen Vale, 33 years old, eldest daughter of the Vale family, and, apparently, the biggest fraud to ever wear this last name. If you ask my sister, anyway. I'd love to tell you I didn't see this coming. That the icy looks over Sunday dinner, the text messages gone unanswered, the way my mother's voice dropped whenever I called, none of it prepared me for this. But that would be another lie, wouldn't it? And after all that's happened, I refuse to lie. Not even to myself. The day my sister demanded a family meeting was the first sunny afternoon we'd had all month. I remember standing on my porch, damp hair sticking to my collarbone, the postman's footsteps crunching up the gravel drive. He handed me a thick envelope from the lab I'd paid for out of my own pocket, money scraped together from extra shifts at the flower shop, the same one that used to be my mother's pride until she sold it for my father's medical bills. I thought about opening the envelope right there, tearing it apart like a child on Christmas. But what good was one truth if nobody else would see it? So I waited. I waited until Evelyn, my brilliant, beautiful younger sister, sent me that message. Family meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Don't chicken out. Asterisk. I showed up early. I always do. I sat in my car with the engine off, the scent of damp earth drifting through the cracked window. I watched the house. The same one where we used to make forts out of bed sheets and stay up whispering secrets. It looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown too big for the stories they used to feed me. When I finally stepped inside, the hallway smelled like lemon polish and lavender, the way it always does when my mother's trying to impress someone. The living room lights were too bright. The plastic covers were still on the sofa cushions. Like any of us would dare spill anything tonight. Evelyn was already there, sitting in Dad's old chair. She looked up when I walked in. She didn't smile. She didn't even flinch. "Imogen," she said, like she was greeting a stranger. "Evelyn," I said back, because I'd decided I'd match her word for word tonight. No more second-guessing myself. Dad was by the window, hands trembling as he fiddled with the curtain cord. His chemo had left him gaunt, but there was still an iron rod of stubbornness in his spine. Mom hovered near the doorway to the kitchen, her fingers tapping at the counter. My brother, Callum, leaned against the far wall, phone in hand, pretending this was all beneath him. But I saw the way he kept glancing at me, like he wished I'd turn around and run so he wouldn't have to watch this. "You look tired," Evelyn said. Her voice was honey-coated poison. She crossed her legs, smoothed her skirt, and gestured at the empty chair opposite her. "Sit, we're waiting." I sat. I laid the envelope on my lap. I didn't let it out of my sight. Mum cleared her throat. "Before we start, does anyone want tea? Coffee?" Nobody answered. Evelyn leaned forward. "We're here because Imogen has been spreading stories. Wild, unsubstantiated stories that affect all of us. And I think we deserve to hear the truth. Right, Mum?" Mum nodded, but her eyes flickered down to the floor. Dad didn't move. Callum exhaled sharply but stayed silent. I felt my heart pounding in my throat. "Do you want to tell them what you think I'm lying about, Evelyn? Or should I?" She tilted her head. "You've been telling people Dad's not your biological father. That Mum—" She shot a glance at our mother, who winced. "That Mum lied to you, to all of us. And you've been telling people you can prove it." The room went silent. The tick of the grandfather clock was the only sound between us. I looked at Dad. His hands had gone still, white-knuckled on the curtain cord. He didn't look at me. "I didn't want this to be like this," I said. My voice cracked at the edges, but I didn't care. "I didn't want to drag you all here like it's some courtroom. But I'm tired of you calling me a liar behind my back, Evelyn. So here it is." I laid the envelope on the coffee table. Nobody moved. I could hear my pulse in my ears. "You had no right," Mum whispered. Her eyes, so like mine, were glassy. "No right, Imogen? Didn't I?" I asked. "When I was the one who always felt like I didn't belong? When you'd hush your voices when I walked in? When Dad would look at me like, Like he didn't recognize me? Dad flinched. I saw it. Evelyn's smile was tight, triumphant. This is ridiculous. You think some lad can rewrite our whole family? No, I said. I picked up the envelope again, tore the flap, and slid out the paper. My hands were shaking so badly, I thought I'd rip it. But I held it up anyway, so everyone could see the letterhead, the bolded results, the line that screamed the truth I'd carried like a wound for 33 years. Read it, I said. Go ahead, Evelyn. Read it out loud. Let them hear what you've been trying so hard to bury. She snatched it from my hands. For a moment, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Then she looked at Mum, at Dad, at Callum, each of them frozen in their own storm, and began to read. It was like watching a match drop into dry grass. Words that had been my secret now spilled out in her cold, perfect voice. Paternity test. Non-biological. Probability of parentage. 0%. Dad's hands fell to his sides. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. He just stared at me. No, through me. Like he was searching for some piece of himself in my face and coming up empty. Mom sank onto the armrest, her shoulders heaving. You shouldn't have done this, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You've ruined everything. No, I said, my own tears finally falling. I didn't ruin anything. I didn't lie. I didn't hide. I didn't twist this family into something it's not. I just finally put it into the light. Evelyn slammed the paper down. You don't get to be the victim here. Do you think any of this makes you special? That you're entitled to tear Dad apart while he's sick? Look at him, Imogen. Look at him, asterisk. I did. And for the first time I saw the truth I'd always felt but never dared name. I wasn't his. Not in blood. Maybe not ever. Callum pushed himself off the wall, ran a hand through his hair. What now? You think you're going to replace him? Get some mystery man to swoop in and play daddy? I shook my head. I don't know what comes next. But I know what's real now. And so do you. Mum was crying. Dad hadn't said a word. Evelyn's eyes were wildfire, furious, bright, unstoppable. You think this is over? She spat. You think a piece of paper makes you better than us? I'm calling another meeting tomorrow. And you'd better come prepared. Because you're not the only one with secrets, Imogen. Not by a long shot. I stood, my legs trembling. Good, I said. Bring it all. Bring every lie you've got left. I'll be here. Outside, the sun had vanished behind a wall of clouds. Rain started to tap against the windows, soft at first, then harder. I walked past them. My mother's sobs, my father's silence, my sister's rage. I didn't look back. In my car, I sat in the dark driveway, the DNA report heavy in my hands. The truth was out, but the war had only just begun. ... Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Asterisk. This part is written in first person, deep, dramatic, and layered like an immersive audiobook chapter. It maintains a tight, chronological timeline with no abrupt jumps. ... I don't know how long I sat in that driveway. Long enough for the rain to turn the windshield into a silver haze. Long enough for the streetlights to flicker on one by one. I could see their shadows moving inside the house. My mother pacing from kitchen to hallway. Evelyn's silhouette flitting past the window. Her phone pressed to her ear like she was already spinning the next thread of her web. I should have driven away. Back to my small flat above the flower shop. The place that smelled like roses and damp soil even when I hated it. But my hands wouldn't move. My bones felt made of stone. So I just sat there. The envelope, now empty, on the passenger seat beside me, as if the truth itself needed a place to ride shotgun. When my phone buzzed, I jumped so hard I hit my knee on the steering wheel. One message. From Callum. Asterisk. Come by the pub. Now. Don't make me come get you. Asterisk. He never texted me first. Not unless he needed something. Money. A cover story for Evelyn. A place to crash when he'd fought with his girlfriend. I almost ignored it. But I knew if I didn't go, he'd show up at my door anyway, drunk and slurring, pounding until the neighbors called the landlord. So I started the car. The wipers squealed as they scraped the glass. The old Volvo shuddered to life like it hated being asked to move. I pulled away from the house, headlights sweeping across the front garden where my mother's lavender bushes drooped under the rain. I half expected Evelyn to run out after me, fists full of more accusations. But the house stayed dark behind me, and for a moment, I wondered if they were already rewriting me out of their story. Erasing my name, my seat at that battered oak table, my childhood handprints pressed into the concrete by the back door. The pub was nearly empty when I got there. It always is on a Tuesday. Callum sat at the far end of the bar, 2 empty pint glasses lined up like trophies. He didn't look up when I slid onto the stool beside him. He just pushed the 3rd pint my way. "I'm not drinking," I said. He shrugged. "Suit yourself." I stared at him, my own brother with the same blue eyes we used to share jokes behind our parents' backs. He looked older under the harsh lights, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "Why'd you call me here?" I asked. He snorted. "You think I wanted to do this at Mum's? Christ, Imogen, you dropped a bomb tonight." I gripped the edge of the bar. The wood was sticky under my palms. "It wasn't a bomb, it was the truth." "Same thing, innit?" He took a sip, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "You know what Dad did after you left? He sat down in that chair like he'd been shot. Didn't say a word. Mum's a wreck." "And Evelyn? She's a viper?" I said, half a laugh, half a sob. "Yeah, I know." He gave me a look. "You shouldn't talk about her like that." I slammed my hand on the bar. The bartender glanced over but didn't say a word. "She's the one who called the meeting. She wanted to humiliate me. She thought I'd back down." Callum's jaw tightened. "And you didn't. Good for you." I blinked. That was not what I'd expected to hear. "You believe me? Doesn't matter if I do." He drained the last of his pint. "Dad does. Or he will. He's just old, Imogen. Sick. He doesn't need this." "Oh, so I'm supposed to protect him from my existence?" He turned to me, eyes bloodshot. "I'm not saying you did wrong. I'm saying be careful. Evelyn's gonna twist this. She's already talking to Aunt Fiona, Uncle Pete. She's rallying the whole bloody clan." I felt sick. I could see it so clearly. Evelyn, perched on the edge of Mum's bed, whispering poison into willing ears, making them believe I was the one tearing the family apart. Not the secret, not the lie. Trade of Nafit Sistresos. Callum pulled his phone out and scrolled through something. Then he shoved it in my face. A photo. A baby. Wide brown eyes. Hair stuck up like a dandelion puff. "Who's this?" "My son," he said flatly. I nearly dropped the phone. "Your what?" He took it back, stuffed it in his pocket. "Didn't tell anyone. Not Evelyn, not Mum, not Dad, nobody." I searched his face for the punchline. "Callum, is this a joke? Do I look like I'm laughing?" He slammed the glass down, the sound echoing off the empty pub walls. "You think you're the only one with secrets? The only one who feels like they're living someone else's lie? You think Evelyn's so perfect? She's the worst of us. But she's smart. She keeps receipts on everyone." I sat back. The truth settled over me like wet cement. "So why show me?" He laughed, but it was bitter, scraping the back of his throat. "Because I hate her more than I hate you right now, and you're gonna need all the ammo you can get." I swallowed. "Where's the mother?" He rubbed his temples. "Doesn't matter. She doesn't want anything to do with me. Or him. But if Evelyn finds out, she'll use it." He nodded. "Same way she used you." We sat there in silence for a while. The rain rattled the window panes. A couple in the corner argued about money. The bartender pretended not to hear. Finally, Callum pushed himself off the stool. "I'll walk you out." We stood in the car park, the air sharp and cold. He hugged himself, shivering under his thin jacket. "What are you gonna do?" I asked. He looked out at the streetlights, the puddles glistening like mirrors. "I don't know. Try to be better than Dad was, maybe." Or maybe I'll screw him up, same way he did us. He met my eyes then, and for a second I saw the little boy who used to sneak biscuits into my room when I cried myself to sleep. "Watch your back, Emmy," he said. "Evelyn's not done." "I know." He leaned in, kissed my cheek. "Next time you're buying." I watched him disappear into the rain, the pub door slamming shut behind him. I climbed into my car and locked the doors. My phone buzzed again, this time an email. From the lab. An attached file, more detail than the paper I'd shown them. I didn't open it. I couldn't bear to see my father's name next to the cold line that said, "Probability of parentage, 0%. Instead, I drove home. The city lights blurred through my tears, red and gold smears on the wet road. By the time I stumbled up the steps to my flat, my limbs felt like lead. I locked the door, turned off my phone, and curled up on the sofa still wearing my coat. Sleep didn't come. My mind spun with all the things I hadn't said. The lies still lodged in my mother's throat. The way Dad hadn't looked at me, not once. And Evelyn. Evelyn with her perfect hair, her perfect voice, her perfect lies. I knew she was planning something. I could feel it in my bones, the same way you feel a storm coming even when the sky is clear. When dawn came, pale and cruel, I forced myself to stand. I brewed coffee so strong it made my hands shake. I showered, dressed in the only suit I owned, and pinned my hair back so tight it felt like a mask. If Evelyn wanted a war, she'd get one. I drove back to the house. The garden was empty, the curtains drawn. I knocked once, twice, and then let myself in with the spare key, hidden under the gnome by the back steps. Same place it had always been. Mom was at the kitchen table, a cold cup of tea in her hands. She didn't look up when I came in. "Where is she?" I asked. She flinched. "Upstairs. She's calling people." "Of course she is." I sat across from her. The kettle rattled on the stove, steam rising but never whistling. "Did you love him?" I asked. Her eyes flicked up, sharp and tired. "Who?" "My real father." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. "Don't do this, Imogen." Too late. She pressed her hands flat to the table. "You think this makes you strong? Digging up graves that should stay buried?" "I think it makes me free." She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You're just like him." "Who?" I pressed. "Tell me." But she wouldn't. She just stood, the chair scraping back, and left the room. I sat there alone, listening to the house breathe. The creak of floorboards, the whisper of rain, the muffled sound of Evelyn's voice upstairs, sharp and bright like broken glass. I knew then that this house wasn't my home. It never really had been. It was a cage I'd built my life around because I thought if I stayed inside, I'd be safe. But there are some truths you can't keep in cages. They grow teeth. They bite. And Evelyn was about to learn that I was done being bitten. ... I was done being bitten. The words kept echoing in my head as I sat alone at that kitchen table, my mother's untouched tea still steaming in front of me. I could hear Evelyn upstairs, her voice drifting through the thin plaster walls like poison gas, soft and hard all at once. She was making her calls, weaving her narrative before I could take my next breath. I could almost see her there, perched on her childhood bedspread, every word calculated. I rose from the chair, my palms pressed so hard against the table that my fingertips ached. I needed to see her. Not tomorrow, not after she'd planted more seeds in our family tree. Now, the stairs groaned under my steps. I moved like I used to when I was 13, sneaking in past curfew, trying not to wake Mom or Dad. Except now I wanted her to hear me. I wanted my footsteps to announce every ounce of defiance I'd swallowed for 3 decades. When I reached the top, I paused. The landing smelled like old paint, and the rose air freshener Mom bought in bulk. My eyes went straight to Evelyn's door. The same door she'd covered with posters and Polaroids when we were kids. Long since stripped down to plain white. I didn't bother knocking. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, laptop open, phone balanced between her shoulder and cheek. She didn't flinch when I shoved the door open so hard it hit the wall. Her eyes flicked up, cool and glassy, before she turned her attention back to whoever was on the line. Yes, Aunt Fiona. I know, it's shocking. She's just so unstable lately. But you know what she's always been like, the dramatics. She raised a finger at me. Wait. Like she was my teacher, and I was a naughty child, interrupting her lesson. I crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed the phone from her shoulder and pressed time a fan before she could squeal. She lunged for it, but I stepped back, shoving it into my pocket. Imogen, are you insane? She hissed. Her voice was sharp enough to cut skin. Who's unstable now? I said. I stood over her, my shadow swallowing the mess of silk pillows she always had arranged just so. You're poisoning them. Every one of them. She rolled her eyes and swung her legs off the bed. Don't be so dramatic. I'm giving them the truth. The real truth. You humiliated Mum. You broke Dad's heart while he's dying. You think they're gonna forgive you for that? You think they want to sit around the dinner table every Sunday and look at your face, knowing you're some stranger's mistake? Her words were acid, each one burning into my ribs. But I didn't flinch. I'd stopped flinching when I tore open that envelope. You're scared, I said. You're scared because you're losing control. She barked out a laugh. Oh, sweetie, this is some control. Watching you flail, watching you scramble to hold this family together after you split it wide open. That's control. You don't get to come back from this, Imogen. You're not the golden girl anymore. I wanted to slap her. God help me, I wanted to feel my palm collide with her smug, perfect face. But I didn't. I breathed deep, steady, cold. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out Callum's photo. The baby. The one secret Evelyn hadn't sniffed out yet. Her eyes narrowed when she saw it, confusion flickering before the threat caught up with her brain. What's that? Collateral, I said, letting her see the edge of the photo before slipping it back inside. Callum's son, your precious next meeting. Maybe I'll bring him up. Or maybe I'll mention the loan you took out last year in Mum's name. Her jaw twitched. You think I don't know? I said. I know everything, Evelyn. I know about the gambling. The online poker. The nights you sat in this room crying when you realized you'd backed yourself into a corner so deep even Dad's money couldn't bail you out. She lunged for me, not to hit, but to grab the bag. I stepped back. Her nails caught my arm, left angry red lines. I am trying to protect this family, she spat. You're protecting yourself. Asterisk. I ripped her hand away. And I'm done letting you use my life to do it. I could see the mask slip then. Just for a heartbeat. The crack beneath the porcelain. The child underneath the queen bee. But it vanished before I could reach it. Get out of my room, she said, her voice low, dangerous. Get out before you what? I said. Call another meeting? Bring more lies? Go ahead, call the whole family. I'll stand there with every document, every receipt. Let's see who they believe when the dust clears. Her eyes glittered with hate, but beneath it I saw it. Fear. Real, animal fear. I turned to leave. At the door I paused. Oh, by the way, I said, looking over my shoulder. Dad didn't look at me once last night. Not once. But he looked at you, and I've never seen him so disappointed. I didn't wait for her to answer. I closed the door, ignoring the heavy thud as something, maybe her mug, maybe the lamp, slammed into it from the other side. Downstairs, Mum was waiting. She stood in the hallway, arms folded tight against her chest, like she was holding her ribs together. What did you say to her? She asked. Nothing she didn't already know, I said. She closed her eyes. Her lips moved, silent like she was praying. For me or for Evelyn? I couldn't tell. I want you out, she said. The words came out like a cough. I want you out of this house. I can't look at you. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded, walked past her, and out the door into the cold morning light. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt soaked through, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. I think we need to talk. The man's voice landed in my chest like a dropped stone. For a heartbeat, I couldn't make sense of it. His face, those eyes, a shade too familiar, a shape I'd traced in the mirror since I was a child and called mine alone, now staring back at me from someone else's skin. He was older than me by maybe 15 years, but the resemblance was there, subtle and undeniable. My eyes, my mother's jaw. I didn't stand. I didn't offer him a chair. I just stared. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice cracked. I hated how small it sounded. He shifted his weight, glancing around my cramped office like it might swallow him whole. His hands were big, raw at the knuckles, fingers twitching like he wanted to tuck them into pockets but didn't know how. "My name's Mason," he said. Mason Greer. The name meant nothing. Just a string of syllables rattling around my brain, refusing to settle. I forced my tongue to move. "I don't know you." "I know." He scratched the back of his neck. "I didn't know you either. Not until, well, not until last week." I bristled. "Last week?" He nodded. "Your lab. The one that did the paternity test. They called me, said there was a partial match in the system. I did one of those ancestry kits years ago. For fun. Got drunk at a stag do and thought it'd be a laugh." He gave a small, humorless chuckle. Turns out it wasn't. I felt my knees threatening to buckle. I sank into my chair because standing suddenly seemed impossible. "A partial match?" I asked, my mouth dry as dust. "So you're saying—" "What? We're related?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Half-siblings. Same father." I pressed my palms to my temples, like I could keep my skull from cracking open. "God," I whispered. This can't be happening." Mason stepped closer but stopped himself. "Look, I didn't want to come here, I swear to you. But once I saw your name, your photo on the file, I don't know what I thought. Maybe you'd want to know. Or maybe you wouldn't. But I couldn't just sit on it." I stared at him, at the mess of him. The oil-stained work jacket, the boots caked in mud. He looked like every man I'd ever passed on the street without a second glance. Except he wasn't. He was my blood. And he was my proof. Proof that my father, the man who raised me but never really saw me, was never mine to begin with. A wave of nausea surged up my throat. I grabbed the wastebasket from under my desk, but nothing came. Just dry heaving, an empty ache. Mason hovered there, helpless. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." I shook my head. Don't be. It's not you, it's her. It's all of them." I forced myself upright, breathing through my teeth until the spinning stopped. "Why are you really here?" I asked. My eyes narrowed. "You want something. Money. An introduction to the family you never had? Because trust me, you don't want them." His face fell. "No, Christ. No, I'm not here for money. I've got my own life. A wife. 2 girls. I don't want to blow this up more than you already have. I thought maybe you'd want to see him." "Who?" "Our father." My breath hitched. "You know who he is?" Mason nodded. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a battered wallet. He flipped it open and slid a photo across my desk. A faded Polaroid of a man standing in front of a pickup truck. Graying hair. Crooked grin. Same eyes. My eyes. "He's alive?" I asked. My voice was a ghost. Mason's smile was sad. "Yeah. Lives 2 towns over. Never stayed in one place too long. Mom said he was always chasing something. New jobs. New women. I guess one of them was yours." A hot flush of shame crept up my neck. "Don't say it like that." "Sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean— Look, I'm not judging her. Or you. None of this is your fault." I clutched the photo like it might dissolve if I let it go. The man in the picture was leaning on the hood of his truck like he owned the world. He looked nothing like the father who'd raised me. The man who now couldn't even look me in the eye. A dozen questions crowded my skull. Did he know about me? Did he ever try to find me? Does he care? Mason watched my face as if reading every thought. "I'm going to see him," he said softly. "Tomorrow. If you want, you can come. Or not. Your choice. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He took a step back. I'll text you the address. I'm sorry, Imogen. Really. When he left, he closed the door so gently it didn't even click. I sat there for a long time, the photo clutched in my trembling hand. My father. My real father. Out there. Breathing. Existing. A ghost in skin and bone. The weight of it pressed down until the walls of the flower shop seemed to fold in on me. I needed air. Space. I shoved the photo into my bag, told Lena I'd be back, and stepped out into the street. The city was waking up, rain-washed and brittle. I walked for miles, past the shops with their rolling metal shutters, past bus stops littered with cigarette butts and empty crisp packets, past the row of council flats where Mason might have grown up. Where I might have grown up, I thought of Evelyn, her gleaming lies, her meetings, her need to keep me on my knees. She'd die if she knew I'd found him first. She'd twist it. She'd call him trash, a parasite, a stain on our family name. But I didn't care. For once, her voice didn't matter. When I finally stumbled home, the sky was bruised with dusk. I sat on my couch, knees tucked to my chest, phone in hand. The address Mason had texted me glowed on the screen. I typed a reply. Turas fukaim soj, proxo, elel care, coxo, no flourish, no promise, just 3 words that tasted like salt on my tongue. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag like I was going to war. Laptop, chargers, copies of the DNA results, the photo of Mason's dad leaning on that rusted truck. I wrote a note for Lena telling her to run the shop for 2 days. Family business, asterisk. I scribbled, and almost laughed at how stupid that sounded. At dawn, I drove. 2 hours through winding country roads, the fog curling around the hedgerows like ghosts reaching for my tires. My stomach twisted with every mile marker. I kept the radio off. Silence was easier than any song. Mason's car was already there when I pulled up. A battered estate parked behind a row of weeds that pretended to be a lawn. The house was a squat, peeling thing, more shed than home. A rusted bike lay on its side near the steps. A dog barked once, then fell silent. He was waiting for me on the porch. Mason. My brother. The word still felt foreign on my tongue. You ready? He asked. I shook my head. No. He gave a grim smile. Neither am I. We knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Louder. Finally, the door swung open. And there he was. The man from the photo. Older now. Hair, a thin halo of white, eyes bleary but unmistakable. My eyes. He squinted at us, then at me. Can I help you? He rasped. Mason cleared his throat. Hey, Dad. This is Imogen. His eyes flicked to me, narrowed. Imogen? I stepped forward. My hands shook so bad I had to shove them in my pockets. I'm your daughter, I said. I think. Silence. Then he laughed. A low, hollow sound that rattled in his chest. Well, hell, he said. Didn't expect that today. ... I clutched the photo like it might dissolve if I let it go. The man in the picture was leaning on the hood of his truck like he owned the world. He looked nothing like the father who'd raised me. The man who now couldn't even look me in the eye. A dozen questions crowded my skull. Did he know about me? Did he ever try to find me? Does he care? Mason watched my face, as if reading every thought. I'm going to see him, he said softly. Tomorrow. If you want, you can come. Or not. Your choice. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He took a step back. I'll text you the address. I'm sorry, Imogen. Really. When he left, he closed the door so gently, it didn't even click. I sat there for a long time, the photo clutched in my trembling hand. My father. My real father. Out there. Breathing. Existing. A ghost in skin and bone. The weight of it pressed down until the walls of the flower shop seemed to fold in on me. I needed air. Space. I shoved the photo into my bag, told Lena I'd be back, and stepped out into the street. The city was waking up, rain-washed and brittle. I walked for miles, past the shops with their rolling metal shutters, past bus stops littered with cigarette butts and empty crisp packets, past the row of council flats where Mason might have grown up. Where I might have grown up. I thought of Evelyn, her gleaming lies, her meetings, her need to keep me on my knees. She'd die if she knew I'd found him first. She'd twist it. She'd call him trash, a parasite, a stain on our family name. But I didn't care. For once, her voice didn't matter. When I finally stumbled home, the sky was bruised with dusk. I sat on my couch, knees tucked to my chest, phone in hand. The address Mason had texted me glowed on the screen. I typed a reply. Comembories no flourish. No flourish. No promise. Just 3 words that tasted like salt on my tongue. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag like I was going to war. Laptop, chargers, copies of the DNA results, the photo of Mason's dad leaning on that rusted truck. I wrote a note for Lena telling her to run the shop for 2 days. Family business, asterisk. I scribbled, and almost laughed at how stupid that sounded. At dawn, I drove. 2 hours through winding country roads, the fog curling around the hedgerows like ghosts reaching for my tires. My stomach twisted with every mile marker. I kept the radio off. Silence was easier than any song. Mason's car was already there when I pulled up. A battered estate parked behind a row of weeds that pretended to be a lawn. The house was a squat, peeling thing. More shed than home. A rusted bike lay on its side near the steps. A dog barked once, then fell silent. He was waiting for me on the porch. Mason. My brother. The word still felt foreign on my tongue. You ready? He asked. I shook my head. No. He gave a grim smile. Neither am I. We knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Finally, the doors swung open. And there he was. The man from the photo. Older now, hair, a thin halo of white, eyes bleary, but unmistakable. My eyes. He squinted at us, then at me. Can I help you? He rasped. Mason cleared his throat. Hey, Dad, this is Imogen. His eyes flicked to me, narrowed. Imogen? I stepped forward. My hands shook so bad I had to shove them in my pockets. I'm your daughter, I said. I think. Silence. Then he laughed. A low, hollow sound that rattled in his chest. Well, hell, he said. Didn't expect that today. Dash, 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 dot. Well, hell, he said. Didn't expect that today. His laugh wheezed out like a cough that never finished. He leaned against the chipped door frame, the wood sagging under his shoulder. I could smell stale cigarettes and old engine oil, something sour that stuck to the back of my throat. I should have said something clever, something strong, something that made it clear I hadn't come here to beg for scraps of affection. But the truth was, standing there in the morning damp with Mason next to me, I felt 12 years old again. Small. Stupid. Hoping someone would open the door and pull me in without asking questions, I couldn't answer. Mason shifted his weight beside me. Can we come in, Dad? The old man, my father, shrugged. Suit yourself. He turned and limped back inside, leaving the door swinging open behind him. Mason and I exchanged a glance. I don't know what I expected. A hug? A laugh? An apology? The air between us felt brittle, like one wrong word would shatter it for good. I stepped over the threshold. The living room was exactly what you'd think. Worn-out sofa covered in a blanket that looked older than me. Coffee table littered with beer cans and unopened mail. An ashtray balanced on the armrest, its contents overflowing onto the carpet. On the wall, a faded photo of a fishing boat. Nothing else. No family pictures. No framed memories. He dropped onto the sofa with a groan and reached for the half-crushed pack of cigarettes on the table. His fingers shook as he tapped one out, stuck it between his lips, and lit it with a battered Zippo. "So?" he said, squinting at me through the smoke. "Imogen, huh?" I nodded, my arms wrapped tight across my chest. "Your mum's name? What was it again?" he asked, though I could see in his eyes he already knew. "Marianne Vale," I said. The name tasted like vinegar. "You met her at a wedding, apparently." He barked out another laugh. "A wedding? Jesus Christ, that was years ago. Must have been, what? 34, 35 years now? Christ." Mason leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "She never told her husband, did she?" "Dad." My father shrugged. "Wasn't my problem, was it?" "She wanted a good man, that's what she said." "You'd be a good fling, Aaron she said. "But she didn't want my name on a birth certificate." The bluntness of it hit me in the ribs. I felt the edges of myself slipping sideways like a painting coming off the wall. "That's it?" I asked. My voice came out thin. "You just left? Never checked?" He looked at me, his eyes narrowing as he drew deep on the cigarette. "What'd you want me to do?" "Your mom said she'd handle it. Said you'd be better off. I was a mechanic, for Christ's sake. Bounced from garage to garage, drank too much, smoked too much, still do." I hated him then. Not because he'd left, but because he seemed so fine with it. Like I'd been some stray dog he'd shooed away from his porch. Mason's hand brushed mine. The tiniest gesture, but it anchored me to the floor. To the room. To this ugly truth. "Do you even want to know me?" I asked. The question slipped out before I could catch it. He looked me up and down. "Don't know. Do you want to know me?" And that was when I realized I didn't. Not really. Not this version, at least. Not the man who looked at his daughter like she was a bill that had come due after 33 years of being lost in the mail. I swallowed, the taste of stale air clinging to my teeth. "I just wanted to see your face. I wanted to know you were real." He stubbed out the cigarette, ashes tumbling onto his jeans. "Well, now you do." Mason cleared his throat. "You ever think about us? Me? Her? Dad? Aaron, I forced myself to think. Shrugged again. "Sure. Sometimes. Regret's cheap. Doesn't cost you much to feel it." The room went quiet. A dog barked outside. The refrigerator hummed from the tiny kitchen. And that was it. That was the grand reunion. A half-brother who looked like he wanted to scoop me up and run. And a father who looked like he was waiting for the next pint to wash this whole conversation out of his mouth. I stood. I should go. Aaron raised an eyebrow. "Already? You drove all this way." "There's nothing else to say." Mason stood too. "Come on, Immy. I'll walk you out." At the door I turned back. He was lighting another cigarette, already half gone from the first drag. "Did you ever love her?" I asked. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to believe someone did. He looked at me, smoke curling from his lips. "Sure. For a night. That's all it was. .. We stepped out into the sharp chill of late morning. I didn't speak until we'd reached my car. "I'm sorry," Mason said, voice quiet. I shook my head. "You didn't do this." He looked at me. Those same eyes, soft and sad. "Yeah, but I didn't stop it either." I hugged him then, tight, desperate. It was awkward. He smelled like motor oil and soap, but it was real. More real than anything that house could offer. "Drive safe," he said when we pulled apart. "If you need me, you know where I am." I nodded. "Thank you. .. The drive back was a blur of hedgerows, roundabouts, and the same song playing over and over because I was too numb to switch the radio off. My mind kept looping one question: what now? My family didn't want me. My real father didn't either. Evelyn was circling like a shark, ready to drag every bit of my name through the dirt until I was nothing but the stain she'd always wanted me to be. By the time I pulled into the flower shop's car park, the sky had cracked open again, drizzle soaking the pavement. Lena stood at the window, peering out like she'd been waiting for me all day. The bell above the door chimed when I stepped inside. "You okay?" she asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say no. All I did was shrug. She reached into her hoodie pocket and held out a paper cup. "Tea? Sugar? Too. You looked like you'd need it." I took it, the warmth seeping into my fingers. "Thank you." I disappeared into my office again, the walls closing around me like a padded cell. I pulled out the DNA results, the photo of Aaron, the voicemail from Dad, proof, lies, ghosts. They felt the same now. Paper ghosts haunting my desk. I knew what I had to do. Evelyn wanted a war? Fine, I'd give her one. I dug out my old file box from under the desk. Inside, I'd kept every letter, every receipt, every passive-aggressive birthday card from Mom that reminded me how I was her difficult one. I found the photo from my graduation. Me in a borrowed gown, Dad standing stiff beside me like a statue. I found the copies of the loan documents Evelyn had tricked Mom into signing. I found Callum's baby photo, tucked where I'd hidden it after our pub confession. Everything was here. The bones of the story I'd never told. The story they'd bury me to keep secret. I spread it all out on the floor like puzzle pieces. My fortress. ... Midway through taping it all to the corkboard behind my desk, Lena knocked and poked her head in again. "There's a lady out front asking for you," she said. "Says she's family." I stiffened. "What does she look like?" "Tall, blonde, looks like she could break glass with her cheekbones." "She's not happy." I laughed, but it sounded like a bark. "Evelyn." Lena blinked. "Want me to tell her to leave?" I almost said yes. But this was the game, wasn't it? The next round. "No," I said. "Send her in." A minute later, Evelyn glided through the door like she owned the place. She looked around my cramped office with thinly veiled disgust. "This is where you work?" she said, her lip curling. "Smells like mildew." "Sit down, Evelyn," I said. She didn't. She crossed her arms instead, the crisp white of her blouse so bright it made my eyes ache. "I'm calling another family meeting tonight," she said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Everyone's coming. Mom, Dad, Aunt Fiona, Uncle Pete, Callum, even Granddad. I want you there." I raised an eyebrow. "What's this one for? To burn me at the stake?" Her eyes glittered. "To finish what you started." I leaned back in my chair, calm. "You sure you want that? I have things too. Receipts. Documents. Stories you don't want told." She barked out a laugh. "You think anyone's going to believe you over me? Sweetheart, I'm the only thing holding this family together." I let the silence stretch until it snapped. "We'll see." She stepped forward, pressing her palms flat on my desk, her face inches from mine. I could smell her perfume. Expensive, cold. "I'm going to bury you, Imogen," she hissed. "I'm going to make sure when they look at you, all they see is the lie." I smiled then, wide, real. It rattled her. "You already did," I said. "But now they'll see who taught me how." She recoiled, storming out, her heels clacking like gunshots on the old linoleum floor. ... When she was gone, I stared at the corkboard, at the puzzle of my life pinned up in ink and paper. I knew what I had to do now. If they wanted the truth, they'd get it. If they wanted blood, they'd get that too. But they'd never get my silence again. Before I left for the meeting, I scribbled a note on my pad for Lena. "If I don't come back, sell the shop. Take what you need. The rest is yours." Then I grabbed the file box, my bag, and the ghost of every secret they'd ever forced me to swallow. ... This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. ... And I walked out into the night, the storm brewing behind my ribs, ready for the reckoning that waited at that old oak table. Dash, 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 dot. I walked out into the night, the storm brewing behind my ribs, ready for the reckoning that waited at that old oak table. The sky above the city was bruised purple, clouds roiling like they were holding their breath just for me. I felt the wind slide icy fingers down the collar of my coat, but I didn't shiver. Let it rain. Let it all come down tonight. Every lie, every half-truth they'd buried under birthday cakes and polite smiles. I drove in silence. The Volvo's dashboard flickered whenever I hit a bump, the headlights cutting narrow cones through the dark lanes. My bag sat on the passenger seat like a loyal dog, the box of receipts, photos, DNA papers wedged beside it. I ran my fingertips over the edges of the manila folders, grounding myself in the roughness. I was done showing up empty-handed. Done letting Evelyn shape my story for me. The Vale house glowed like a lantern when I pulled up. All the windows lit, every curtain drawn back. An invitation or a threat, depending on how you looked at it. I sat in the driveway for a moment, staring at the front door. I half expected Evelyn to fling it open, that trademark smirk waiting to carve me open. But the door stayed closed. I stepped out, gravel crunching under my boots. My keys jingled in my pocket like a nervous heartbeat. For a second, I almost laughed. The same driveway where I'd learned to ride my bike, the same steps I'd sat on every Halloween, waiting for Mum to check my sweets for poison, while Dad pretended to be the monster in the bushes. It was all here, wrapped up in peeling paint and lavender bushes gone wild. Inside, the air was hot and stale, like they'd kept every window shut for days. I could hear them, low murmurs drifting from the dining room, the old oak table creaking under the weight of their gathered judgment. I pictured them arranged like jurors. Mum, eyes red and raw, Dad slumped in his chair like an old scarecrow, Evelyn standing at the head, queen of the Inquisition. Callum somewhere in the back, pretending to be invisible. I paused at the threshold to the dining room. 1 deep breath. 2. Then I stepped inside. Every eye snapped to me at once. Mum was perched on the edge of her seat, wringing a tissue between her hands until it was nothing but pulp. Dad didn't look at me. He just stared at his tea like it might offer him a new life. Evelyn was radiant in her crisp blouse and carefully arranged hair, the picture of righteous martyrdom. And Callum, my sweet, broken brother, sat hunched against the wall, eyes flicking between me and Evelyn like a child caught between two warring parents. Aunt Fiona and Uncle Pete were here too, flanking Evelyn like hired muscle. Even Grandad Vale, ancient, brittle and sharp as a tack when he wanted to be, was propped at the far end, his cane resting against his leg. Evelyn was the first to speak. "Imogen," she said, her voice smooth and sharp, "sit down." I didn't. I dropped my bag on the table instead, the thud echoing through the room. Papers spilled out receipts, photos, the DNA report with its cold, bold, probability of parentage, 0%. Evelyn's eyes flickered to it, then back to me. I saw the tiniest tremor in her jaw. "Good. You called this meeting," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "So talk." Mum flinched at my tone. Grandad Vale's cane thudded once against the floor. A warning or an exclamation? I couldn't tell. Evelyn clasped her hands in front of her. "We're here to decide what happens next." I let out a sharp bark of laughter. "Decide? I'm not a stray dog you're debating whether to keep or put down." Grandad's cane thudded again. "You forged Mary's name?" he rasped, voice thin but deadly. Evelyn's eyes darted between us, searching for an ally. Mum wouldn't meet her gaze. Dad looked like he was watching the last flames of his legacy burn to ash. "I did it for us!" Evelyn shrieked. "For this family, for you, Dad, for everything we've built." I leaned in, close enough to see the sweat on her upper lip. "No, you did it for yourself. Because you can't stand not being the center of every story." Callum pushed himself away from the wall. His voice was low but strong, stronger than I'd ever heard it. She's right, Evie. You've been bleeding us dry for years. I covered for you. I let you lie. I'm done. Evelyn turned on him, eyes wide. You're taking her Doc's side? After everything? I'm taking the truth's side, he said. He looked at me. And I saw him then, my brother, my ally. Maybe the only real piece of family I had left in this room. Evelyn's shoulders shook, but the tears wouldn't come. She'd used them all up on her own lies. Mom finally spoke, voice a whisper. Imogen, I'm sorry. I met her eyes. I know. ... The storm that had been brewing inside me cracked open then. But it wasn't rage. It was relief. Bitter, clean, cold relief that scoured me raw but left me standing. I packed up my bag. The papers stayed on the table, their ink more permanent than any memory. At the door, I turned back. Evelyn was sobbing now, Granddad's cane tapping out her sentence before he'd even spoken it. Mum sat hunched, small as a child. Dad stared at his tea, eyes blank. Callum caught my arm. Where are you going? I managed a sad smile. Home, whatever that means now. He squeezed my hand. Can I come? I laughed. A real one this time. Yeah, you can come. Together we stepped out into the night. The sky opened up, rain pelting down like the truth I'd fought so long to find. Behind me, the Vale house burned in silence, not with flames, but with the secrets we'd finally dragged into the light. ... Next part will pick up exactly here. Imogen and Callum outside the house, rain falling, the family fractured, but the story not over yet. Aunt Fiona's lips pursed. Watch your tone, girl. I snapped my eyes to her. Don't call me girl. I'm 33, and I'm not yours to scold. The room went quiet. Evelyn's gaze hardened to diamond. Do you even hear yourself? She said, voice rising. Do you understand what you've done to this family? To Mum? To Dad? Dad's tea rattled in his saucer. He still didn't look at me. I stepped closer to him, the anger burning through my veins like rocket fuel. Dad, look at me, please. His eyes flicked up, bloodshot, watery, so tired. But there was something under the exhaustion, something like shame, or maybe relief that he didn't have to pretend anymore. Say something, I whispered. His lips parted, but Evelyn cut him off. Don't you dare, she snapped. Don't you put this on him, Imogen. He's sick. He doesn't need your poison right now. I rounded on her. My poison? You're the one who's been feeding him lies for years. How many secrets did you keep, Evelyn? How much of this did you know? Aunt Fiona slammed her palm on the table. Enough. This isn't helping. Evelyn's smile was cold, tight. You want the truth, Imogen? Fine. You want everyone to hear it? Here it is. You were never one of us. You were Mum's mistake. The affair she buried so deep she almost forgot it herself. Dad knew. He always knew. I turned to Mum. Is that true? Her eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence roared louder than any confession. Evelyn leaned in, her voice low and venomous. And you could have lived out your life never knowing. But you had to dig. You had to make this about you. Now look. She gestured around the table. Dad, small and pale in his chair. Mum, trembling. Callum, shrinking into himself. Granddad, tapping his cane like a metronome, counting down the seconds until the next explosion. I felt something break inside me. Not like glass, but like old rope finally snapping under too much weight. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photo of Mason and the battered Polaroid of Aaron leaning on his pickup. I tossed them onto the table. This is the truth, I said. My real father, he didn't want me. None of you do either. So what happens next? Do we sit here and pretend I'm going to disappear? That you can erase me like you erased the truth? Callum spoke then, his voice raw. "Imi, don't." I cut him off. "No, not this time." I pulled out the loan papers Evelyn forged in Mum's name, slid them to Grandad Vale. His eyes narrowed as he read, lips curling in disgust. "You think you're the glue that holds this family together, Evelyn?" I said. "You're the rot. You've been stealing from Mum, lying to Dad, lying to all of us." Evelyn's mask slipped for half a heartbeat, a flash of panic before it snapped back to rage. "You have no proof," she hissed. I laughed. "It's right there, you idiot. Bank records. Signatures. You think Granddad's gonna let that slide?" Behind me, the Vale house burned in silence. Not with flames, but with the secrets we'd finally dragged into the light. Callum and I stood at the edge of the front steps, the rain soaking through our coats before either of us thought to move. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands, the flames sputtering in the wind. He didn't offer me one. He knew I'd quit years ago, and besides, we both understood some poisons were best left behind. We didn't say anything at first. The air between us was heavy, the house behind us heavier. Every window glowed with its soft, lying light, like the ghosts inside were pretending we'd never broken the locks on the truth. When Callum finally spoke, his voice was smaller than I'd heard it in years. "I thought she'd keep it together, you know. Evelyn. I really did." I snorted, rainwater dripping from my lashes. "She always kept it together. That was the problem." He laughed, a short, bitter bark, and flicked the cigarette butt into a puddle. The ember hissed and died. "What happens now?" I looked at him, my baby brother who wasn't a baby anymore, who was maybe the only piece of the Vale name that still felt like mine. "Now? I go home. You come with me if you want. We figure out what a family looks like when you cut out the rot." His eyes flicked back to the house. "Mum's not gonna forgive this." I almost felt a pang then, that old, brittle guilt that had kept me on my knees for so long. But it didn't stick. It slid off me like the rain. "I didn't come for forgiveness," I said. "Neither should you." He didn't argue. He just followed me to the Volvo, our feet splashing through the overgrown lavender bushes. As I started the engine, the front door cracked open. For a moment, I thought I saw Mum's silhouette behind the glass, but I didn't wait to find out if it was her or Evelyn, or just a shadow playing tricks on me. I drove ... The roads were slick, the city lights reflected back at us in a fractured mirror of street lamps and neon signs. Callum fiddled with the heater, mumbling about how the Volvo smelled like roses and burnt coffee. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands at 10 and 2, the way Dad had taught me before we both knew he wasn't really my dad. Funny how the body remembers lessons the heart never fully trusted. "Where's the kid?" I asked suddenly, surprising myself. Callum jumped a little, then laughed under his breath. "With his mum. I see him on weekends. Sometimes." "Does he know you're his dad?" He shook his head. "Not yet. He just knows I'm Uncle Cal." I shot him a look. "You're gonna tell him, right?" He slumped against the window. "One day, when I'm not him." That landed heavy in the car. When I'm not him. He didn't have to say the name. Dad's ghost was in the rearview mirror, riding home with us. "You're not him," I said. The words sharp but true. He didn't answer. Didn't have to. ... We got back to my flat just before midnight. The rain followed us up the cracked concrete steps, drumming on the metal railing. Inside, the place smelled like leftover soil and cheap candle wax. Safe, if such a thing even existed. Callum crashed on the couch without asking. He kicked off his boots, grabbed the battered fleece throw blanket I kept for guests I never had, and rolled over like he'd been doing it all his life. Maybe, in some ways, he had. I stood in the doorway to the tiny kitchen, watching him breathe. He was so young when I left for university. When I first realized that Evelyn had already claimed him as her next project, her next pawn. Back then, I thought I could rescue him. Back then, I thought I could rescue all of us. Now, I just wanted to let him rest. ... I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, The envelope from the lab laid out in front of me next to Aaron's Polaroid, the printout of the voicemail Dad left me, my scribbled notes about Mason. I had the shape of the story now, but it still felt hollow, like a puzzle with too many pieces forced into the wrong slots. At 3 in the morning, I made tea. The windows steamed up, my reflection soft around the edges. Eyes darker, sharper than the girl who'd sat at this table months ago, wondering why her family's laughter always stopped when she walked in. Somewhere around dawn, Callum shuffled in, his hair sticking up like a haystack. "You're still up?" he rasped. I slid a mug across to him. Couldn't sleep. He sniffed the steam, made a face. "You still make it too strong." I managed a smile. "Family tradition." We drank in silence. Outside, the city woke up in fits and starts. Early buses rumbling down the main road. A fox picking through bins in the alleyway below my window. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" Callum asked suddenly. "What?" "Telling the truth." I didn't answer right away. I thought of Dad's eyes, when he realized I'd ripped the veil off his carefully curated lie. I thought of Mum's trembling hands, Evelyn's mask cracking like old porcelain, Granddad's cane thudding like a gavel. And I thought of Mason, my half-brother who'd showed up at my flower shop door with my own eyes staring back at me, the father I'd found who'd turned out to be as hollow as the name he gave me. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think it was." Callum ran a hand through his hair. "Good, 'cause I'm pretty sure we're gonna pay for it for the rest of our lives." "Probably," I said, laughing into my tea. ... A few hours later we split. He had work. I had deliveries. The world, stubborn and oblivious, kept turning. I spent the morning at the flower shop, avoiding Lena's curious glances. I lost myself in the rhythm of trimming stems, arranging bouquets that would sit on someone's kitchen table or hospital bedside, blooming and dying without ever knowing the lies that paid for them. Just before closing, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Asterisk Imogen Vale? Asterisk. Yes. Asterisk. "This is Fiona Whitmore. I'm your aunt." Asterisk. Aunt Fiona. Evelyn's guard dog. The one who'd sat at that table, smug and self-righteous, while I pulled the curtain back on her niece's crimes. "What do you want?" I asked, pressing the phone to my ear hard enough to hurt. She sighed. "A theatrical thing. Your grandfather wants to see you. Alone." My chest went tight. "Granddad Vale? Why?" "You know why. He's not well. He wants to say his piece." I almost said no. Almost hung up and blocked the number. But I heard something in her voice, not threat, but resignation. Like even she knew this was the part they couldn't spin into a better version. "Fine," I said. "When?" "Tonight." "The house." Of course. The house. The cage I'd finally pried open. ... Callum met me at the flower shop, just as I was locking up. He didn't even need to ask. He just saw my face, nodded, and climbed into the passenger seat like we were kids sneaking out to a party instead of driving into the mouth of the past. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked as we turned off the main road onto the long gravel drive. "No," I said, "but I have to." The house looked smaller now. Not because it was any different, but because I was. I parked by the hedges, the same ones I'd hidden behind when Evelyn chased me with her perfect lies and sharper teeth. Aunt Fiona met us at the door. She was dressed in black like someone had died. Maybe something had. "He wants to see her alone," she told Callum, her eyes flicking over him like he was dirt on her shoe. Callum bristled. "She's not going in there without me." "It's fine," I said, touching his arm. "I've got this." He watched me step inside, his jaw tight, eyes wary. I almost felt sorry for him, trapped between the sister who lied and the sister who couldn't lie anymore. ... Granddad Vale's room smelled like old talcum powder and the slow rot of a house too stubborn to die. He was propped up in bed, a tartan blanket pulled tight around his shoulders, his cane within reach. "Imogen," he rasped when he saw me. His eyes were clearer than I expected. sharp pinpricks of blue that had once made Evelyn flinch. "Granddad." I stood by the foot of the bed, unsure if I should sit or stand. He waved a bony hand. "Sit down, girl." I obeyed. He stared at me for a long time. So long I thought he'd drifted off. But then he spoke. "You did what none of us had the courage to do." The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. "You knew?" I whispered. He snorted. "Course I knew. Your mother was never good at lying. Thought she was, but she wasn't. I saw it the day she brought you home from hospital. That look in her eye, the guilt, the terror." I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Wasn't my place," he said. "Your father, poor sod, wanted to believe you were his. Who was I to rip that away from him? And you were the best of them. Even when they made you feel like you weren't." My vision blurred. I blinked it away. "I don't feel like the best of anything," he laughed. "Dry, brittle. You're the only honest one in this nest of snakes. That's worth something." He coughed, the sound rattling his ribs. I reached for the glass of water on the bedside table and held it to his lips. He drank, his hands trembling so badly I had to steady him. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Don't let them break you, Imogen. Not Evelyn, not your mother, none of 'em. You stand tall. You build your life the way you want. You hear me?" I nodded. "I hear you." He squeezed my hand, his skin thin as parchment. "Good girl." He drifted off then, his eyes fluttering shut, breath whistling through cracked lips. I sat there a while longer, my hand still in his. The old house creaked around us. The ghosts quieter, now that someone had said the thing none of them would. ... When I finally stepped back outside, Callum was waiting at the end of the drive. He didn't ask what Granddad had said. He didn't have to. He just wrapped an arm around my shoulders and walked me back to the car. We drove home in silence, but for once, it didn't feel heavy. It felt true. ... Lena showed up with 2 coffees and a giant chocolate muffin balanced on a napkin. "You look lighter," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Don't say that," I groaned, but I couldn't stop my grin. "It's just the lack of screaming." She nudged my arm. "Everything good with your family?" I almost said yes. But I caught myself. "Everything's true." She didn't push. She just handed me the muffin and went back to filling the front window with fresh freesias and peonies. We worked in companionable silence, the hum of the street seeping in through the glass. Halfway through tying up a bouquet for Mrs. Kahn down the road, my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. "Imogen?" It was Mason. My heart did a stupid stutter in my chest. "Hey." "Sorry. I know you're probably busy. I thought you should know." "Dad. Aaron. He's in hospital." The words fell like pebbles, each one making a tiny, perfect hole in my calm. "What happened?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Heart attack. They said he's stable. For now." Stable. For now. Words that felt too familiar, too close to Dad. The father who'd raised me, who sat in his chair and let my truth wreck him without ever meeting my eyes. "Do you want me to come?" I heard myself ask, and I didn't know which father I meant, or if there was a difference anymore. Mason was quiet for a second. I could hear voices in the background. A nurse, maybe. A crackle of the intercom. "I don't know," he said finally. "That's your call, but I think he'd want to see you. Even if he can't say it." I chewed my lip. The flowers blurred in front of me. A pink smear of petals and green stems. "I'll think about it," I said. "Yeah," Mason murmured. "Okay." We hung up. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. ... By noon, I'd made my decision. I left Lena in charge. She just raised an eyebrow, gave me a one-armed hug, and told me not to let the world break my nose again. I scribbled a note for Callum on the fridge. Gone to see the past. Back soon. The drive to the hospital was too familiar. The same motorway that led to Dad's chemo ward, the same cracked car park, the same stale smell of disinfectant and coffee that never quite tasted like anything. Aaron, my real father, asterisk the word still strange, was in a small, pale room that smelled like bleach and second chances nobody wanted to take. He looked smaller than he had on that porch, smaller even than Dad had looked the night I dropped the DNA report on the table like a live grenade. Tubes and wires crawled over his chest, his hands pale and spotted. Mason stood by the window, arms crossed over his chest, face pinched like he hadn't slept in days. He caught my eye and gave me the smallest nod. I sat by the bed. Aaron's eyes fluttered open, cloudy but still mine in some strange way. "Hey," I said. He smirked, the corner of his mouth twitching up. "Hey yourself." I didn't know what to say. What do you say to the man who gave you your eyes but nothing else? Thank you? I hate you? I wish I'd never found you. I'm glad you came, he rasped. I blinked. You are? He coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Mason flinch. Better late than never, E.H. I shook my head, tears pricking the backs of my eyes. You don't get to say that. He didn't argue. He just stared at the ceiling, his breath wheezing in and out, the monitor beside him ticking off each fragile second. I wanted to be better, he whispered. Never was. I know, I said. And I did. God help me. I did. Mason turned away, wiping his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Aaron's fingers twitched on the blanket. I took his hand. It was cold, heavy. I squeezed it, and for a moment, I felt like I was holding on to all the versions of myself that never got to be. When the monitor beeped an alarm, nurses rushed in. Mason pulled me back, out of the way, his hand tight around mine. We watched together as the ghosts faded from Aaron's eyes, leaving us behind to figure out what family meant when there was nobody left to lie about it. .. We stood in the car park afterward, the wind whipping around us like it knew a secret we didn't. Mason broke the silence. I'm glad you came. Yeah, I said, my voice raw. Me too. He squeezed my shoulder. Come visit the girls sometime. They'd like you. I laughed, a wet, broken sound. Yeah, I'd like that. .. The drive home was quiet. The truth settled in my chest like warm stones. Heavy, but solid. Real. When I got back, Callum was waiting on the steps. He looked up, searching my face. He's gone? He asked. I nodded. He pulled me into a hug, and this time I didn't pull away. Inside, the flower shop lights glowed soft and golden behind the shutters. Tomorrow, we'd open again. Roses. Lilies. Fresh starts. Some families break you. Some truths save you. Mine did both. .. Next part will pick up exactly here. Imogen and Callum back at the flat. The reckoning behind them, but the rebuilding still ahead. Mine did both. Callum didn't let go of me for a long time. We stood there on the concrete steps outside my flat, the city humming around us like it had no clue what we'd just left behind in that hospital. In that house. In that small, suffocating room where Aaron, my father asterisk, had looked at me like he was still trying to figure out if I was real. I felt his hand tighten on my shoulder, grounding me like he always used to when we were kids. Back when we still believed that if we closed our eyes tight enough, the monsters in the hallway would stay in the dark. That the house would be safe if we were quiet. That Evelyn's hissed threats and Mum's silence and Dad's cold distance were just phases. Just grown-ups doing grown-up things. Some lies you grow out of. Others grow into you. Come inside, Callum said, finally pulling back. It's freezing out here. I followed him in. The hallway smelled like stale coffee and the lilies I'd forgotten to throw out. their petals browning at the edges, dropping like soft sighs onto the worn carpet. Home. Or whatever was left of it. Callum dropped onto the couch, boots still on, the same spot he'd claimed since this all started. I leaned in the doorway, arms folded across my chest, watching him fiddle with the frayed edge of the cushion like he was picking apart every word he couldn't say. "He's gone," I said, just to hear it out loud. "Yeah." He ran a hand through his hair. "Mason, okay?" I nodded. "As okay as he can be. He's got a wife, kids, a life. He'll be fine." Callum huffed out a laugh. "You got a brother now, a proper one." "You too." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Weird, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "Weird. ... We stayed like that for hours. Him half dozing on the couch, me perched on the armrest, the flat so quiet I could hear the tick of the old kitchen clock behind the walls. Every so often my phone buzzed. Messages from Lena checking in, one from Mason that just said, "Thank you for coming." Nothing from Mom, nothing from Evelyn. That silence should have felt like freedom. Instead, it was a splinter under my skin. Near midnight I stood up. Callum blinked at me groggy. "Where you going?" "Back," I said. His eyebrows shot up. "Are you insane? After everything?" I pulled my coat off the hook, the same old green trench that still smelled faintly of roses and stale rain. "I need to see it. One last time." He pushed himself upright, eyes wide. "I'm coming." "You don't have to." He grabbed his boots. "I'm coming. ... We drove in silence. Again, but this time it felt different. Not heavy. Not brittle. Just true. The world doesn't stop spinning just because you finally decide to stand still. The Vale house was dark when we pulled up. No lights in the windows. No silhouettes pacing the upstairs hallway. The lavender bushes by the front steps were ragged from the frost. I half expected Evelyn to fling the door open, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. But there was nothing. Just the soft hiss of the wind. Callum looked at me, his breath fogging the glass. "Ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Inside, the hallway smelled like it always did. Lemon polish, and the faint trace of Mum's cheap rose soap. Except now it smelled old, sour, like something left out too long. We stood in the living room doorway, shoulder to shoulder, staring at the old oak table. The scene of the crime. The battlefield. The place where the family we'd been pretending to be had finally cracked open like a rotten egg. Mum sat in Dad's old chair, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her hair hung loose, grayer than I'd ever seen it, her eyes two tiny chips of flint in her drawn face. "You came back," she said. Her voice was small, brittle. I didn't step inside. Neither did Callum. We hovered there, the distance between us more honest than any apology. "I heard about Aaron," she said. "Of course you did," I said. "This town's good at keeping secrets, until it isn't." Her lips twitched, almost a smile but not. Did he say anything? I thought about Aaron's cold hand in mine. The wheeze in his chest. The half grin he'd managed just before the light went out. Better late than never, But he said enough, I said. Callum cleared his throat. "Where's Evelyn?" Mum's eyes flicked to the darkened staircase behind us. "Packing." "Packing?" I echoed. She nodded, voice flat. "She's going to stay with Fiona for a while. Says she needs time to regroup." I barked out a laugh. "That's one word for it." Mum flinched. "Imogen, please." "No," I held up a hand. "Don't. Not this time." I stepped forward, just enough to meet her eyes. The same eyes that had looked past me my entire life. The same eyes that had stitched me into the lie she'd built around her. "I didn't come here for an apology," I said, "or to fix this. There's nothing left to fix." Her lip trembled. "I never wanted this for you." "Neither did I," said. "But you made your choices. So did I." Callum shifted beside me. "What about Dad?" Mum's hands twitched in her lap. "He's resting. He's fragile. I didn't ask if he'd asked for me. I didn't need to know. Some answers rot you from the inside out. .. I turned to Callum. "Let's go." Mum's voice cracked as we stepped into the hallway. "Imogen, where will you go?" I paused, my hand on the door. I didn't look back. "Home. ... Outside, the air felt like a baptism. Cold, sharp, washing the taste of that house off my skin. Callum lit a cigarette, the flame trembling in the wind. "Are you okay?" he asked. I almost laughed. Almost. "No, but I'm better." He grinned around the cigarette. "Good." We didn't say goodbye. There was nothing to say. We both knew we'd never walk through that door again. Not like that. Not as veiled children trying to fit ourselves into shapes that never fit. ... We got back to my flat just before dawn. Callum crashed on the couch again, this time snoring so loud I threw a pillow at his head just to shut him up. I sat at the kitchen table, the DNA report spread out like a map that didn't lead anywhere I wanted to go. Mason's photo, Aaron's ghost, Dad's empty chair. All of it. True. All of it. Mine. When the sun cracked open the edge of the sky, I pulled out my laptop and started typing. Not for them, not for Evelyn, not for Mum, for me. I wrote it all down. Every lie, every half-truth. Every night I spent wondering why my father's eyes didn't match mine, why Evelyn always hated me for breathing the same air. I wrote until my fingers cramped, until the tears dried on my cheeks, until the truth didn't feel like a wound anymore, just a scar I could run my thumb over without flinching. ... Around noon, Callum stumbled into the kitchen, hair sticking up like a startled hedgehog. He poured himself a bowl of stale cereal, milk straight from the carton, then leaned against the counter, chewing like he hadn't just watched our family burn down. "You know what you should do?" he said through a mouthful of cornflakes. "Enlighten me." He pointed his spoon at me. "Write a book. Make $1 million. Buy Mum's house just to knock it down." I snorted. "That's not how books work." He shrugged. "Still, I'd buy a copy," I grinned. "1 copy. Great." He raised his bowl in a toast. "To the truth. And to being the only sane ones left." I tapped my mug against his cereal bowl. "I'll drink to that. ... When he left that afternoon, back to his tiny flat on the other side of town, back to his son, he still called my mate's kid Asterisk. He hugged me so tight, I thought my ribs might crack. "I've got you," he said. "I know." When the door closed behind him, the flat felt empty. But not lonely. Just mine. I sat back down at my laptop. I didn't know if I'd ever finish the book, or if I'd even let anyone read it. But I knew one thing. The truth was out. It was messy. It was cruel. It was everything they'd tried to bury. And it was mine. ... That night, Lena came by with takeaway and cheap wine. We sat on the kitchen floor, cartons spread between us, chopsticks tapping against plastic lids. "You gonna tell me what happened?" she asked, mouth full of noodles. "Maybe," I said, sipping wine straight from the bottle. "One day." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Good. I like you better messy." I laughed. Loud and real and echoing off the peeling paint. "Yeah," I said. "Me too. ... When she left, I stood at the window, the city breathing below me. The flower shop sign flickered in the streetlight. My name painted on the glass in curling gold letters. It felt right. And wrong. And perfect. Dash dash dash, dot dot. Before the next storm comes, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Dash 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 dot. It felt right. And wrong. And perfect. Standing at that window, my name painted on the glass in that same swirling gold script that had once made me feel like a fraud. Vale and Bloom. I traced my fingertip across the letters, the faint warmth of the streetlight catching in the curls. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the smell of it still clung to the pavement outside, damp and metallic. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and fell quiet again. The city hummed on without me. I pressed my palm to the glass. On the other side of that pane was the world that had never known my name. Not the real one. Not the girl Evelyn had tried so hard to grind down to nothing. Not the child Mum had shushed with sweet tea and softer lies. Not the daughter Dad had loved in the only way he knew how, by pretending I was his even when the truth rattled in the back of his throat like a broken tooth. I wasn't his. I wasn't theirs. Not anymore. Dash 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 dot dot. The next morning I opened the shop early. I flicked on the overhead lights and rolled the heavy shutters up by myself, the metal groaning in protest. Lena arrived late, her hair still half wet, toast hanging from her teeth. "You look awake," she said, giving me a once-over. "That's one word for it," I said, rearranging a bucket of yellow tulips that were already starting to bow their heads. She bit off the last of her toast. "You writing that book?" "Maybe." I didn't tell her about the pages I'd already filled, the half-finished sentences, the scribbled margins, the nights I'd fallen asleep at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand, and my dreams swirling with the taste of old arguments. She didn't push. She just nudged me out of the way, replaced the tulips with a fresh delivery of peonies, and turned on the small radio behind the counter. The news droned on about local elections, a charity bake sale, a missing cat. The world, moving on, just like it always does. Dash 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 dot dot. Around midday, Callum showed up, this time looking halfway put together. His hair was brushed, he'd shaved the rough scruff from his chin. He even wore a shirt with buttons, actual buttons, like an adult. "Well, don't you look respectable?" I teased. He flipped me off behind a lopsided grin. "Don't get used to it. Got a job interview. Thought I'd swing by for luck." Lena leaned on the counter, chewing her pen. "Where?" "Garage," he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "Mate of a mate. Says he'll let me apprentice. Maybe get my own shifts if I don't set the place on fire." I pulled him into a quick hug, ignoring the faint whiff of last night's pub on his jacket. "Proud of you." He mumbled something into my shoulder, something that sounded suspiciously like "love you too," then backed away, eyes shining like he hated himself for feeling it. "Tell your kid yet?" I asked before he could bolt. He winced. "Not yet. One thing at a time, Emmy." "One thing at a time," I echoed. He left with a wave that was more promise than goodbye. Dash 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 dot dot. By closing time, the shop smelled like green stems and wet cardboard. Lena flipped the closed sign while I stacked the leftover bouquets back into the fridge. The hum of the cooler felt almost comforting, a low, steady reminder that life didn't care whose name you carried in your blood. It bloomed or wilted all the same. I stayed late after Lena left. I made tea in my chipped mug, the one Mum gave me when I moved out the first time. It still had the faint outline of a rose painted on the side, the glaze cracked like old porcelain. I traced the edges with my thumb. If I'd stayed, if I'd never taken that test, never ripped the roof off our polite little lie, I might have still been sitting at that old oak table, smiling through tight teeth while Evelyn decided who I was allowed to be. Maybe Mum would still be topping up my tea with forced sweetness. Maybe Dad, the dad who raised me *, would have found the words to say he loved me anyway. But I hadn't stayed. And now I was here. My name on the window, my hands smelling like soil and lilies, The truth curled into the lines of my palms like a new root system finally learning how to grow. Dash, 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 dot, dot. A week passed. Then 2, Evelyn didn't call. Mom didn't show up at my door with forced apologies. Dad stayed quiet, slipping in and out of hospital wards with Callum texting me updates he knew I'd read, but never answer. I saw Mason once. A quick lunch at a cheap cafe by the train station. He looked tired but lighter, the weight of Aaron's name finally off his shoulders. He showed me pictures of his girls. Bright, giggling eyes so much like ours, it made something warm crack open in my chest. "You should meet them," he said, his thumb tapping the screen like he could press me through it. "Yeah," I said. "I want to. Want to. Not have to. Not should. Want." It felt good to say. Dash, 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 dot, dot. One night, Lena dragged me out to a pub. Not the dingy one Callum liked, but a cozy place with fairy lights strung along the beams and battered sofas that looked stolen from a student flat. She parked me in a corner with a pint I didn't really want and said, "Tell me what you're going to do next." "Drink this pint," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You know what I mean." I stared into the foam, the low chatter of strangers swirling around us like smoke. "I don't know," I said. I think I want to stop looking backward." "Big talk," I shrugged. "I've been dragging that house around like an anchor my whole life. It doesn't feel like mine anymore." She raised her glass. "To new anchors." I clinked mine against hers, the amber liquid sloshing onto my hand. Dash, 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 dot, dot. When I got home that night, I found a letter tucked under my door. No stamp, no envelope, just my name in Mom's shaky handwriting. I stood in my hallway for a long time, the flat dark except for the sliver of streetlight bleeding in through the curtains. I ran my thumb under the folded edge. Inside, 3 lines, written in Mom's delicate, looping script. "I don't know how to fix this. The flake mush of fikes, bashla peachy showies. I wish I did. The flake mush of fichi showies. The flake mush of fippies. Ois horror. I hope you're okay." No apology, no promise. Just 3 lines that felt like the most honest thing she'd ever given me. I pressed it to my chest, then stuck it in the back of my journal, right next to the DNA report and the Polaroid of Aaron leaning on his pickup truck. Proof. Lies. Ghosts. All of it. Mine. Dash, 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 dot, dot. The next morning I opened the shop as the sun rose pink and gold behind the terraced roofs. I propped the door open, let the cold spring air drift in, carried on its back the smell of damp concrete and fresh starts. A little girl and her mum came in first thing. Chubby fingers pointing at daisies in a cracked ceramic jug. I wrapped them in brown paper, tied them with a ribbon. The mum thanked me. The girl grinned, her front teeth missing, the gap making her smile wider somehow. As they left, she turned and said, "Your flowers smell like a garden." I laughed. "They are a garden." She skipped out into the morning, her voice ringing down the street like a tiny bell. Dash, 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 dot, dot. By noon, Callum showed up again. This time empty-handed, hair a mess, oil stains on his cuffs. "You look like you got dragged through a hedge backwards," I said. He smirked. "Got the job. Started today." Pride punched through my ribs like sunlight. "I'm so proud of you." He scuffed his boot on the floor, his eyes flicking around the shop. "You ever think about changing the sign?" I raised an eyebrow. "To what?" He shrugged. "Not Chuch a Vale. Just Bloom, you're not them anymore." I looked at the window. The looping gold letters. I thought about Evelyn's voice, sharp and smug, dripping from every syllable of my name for years. About Dad's hands on my shoulder when he thought I wasn't looking. About Mum's soft hushes. About Granddad's last words. "You're the only honest one in this nest of snakes. Bloom." Yeah. Maybe one day. Dash, 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 dot, dot. After Callum left, I locked the door for lunch, pulled out my laptop, and opened the file I hadn't touched in days. My sister called a family meeting to expose my lies, and I brought the DNA results. The title still made me laugh, even now. Like a bad tabloid headline that was somehow my life, I wrote until my fingers ached. The story sprawled across the screen. Messy, raw, unfinished, just like me. And maybe that was the point. Some stories don't end. They just grow. ... Next part will pick up exactly here. Imogen at her laptop, her story unfinished, her life, hers at last. Some stories don't end. They just grow. I stared at the half-finished page on my laptop screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat in the middle of a sentence I wasn't brave enough to finish yet. Outside the shop window, the street bustled on like it always did. The delivery vans pulling up by the corner shop, kids skidding past on cheap scooters, someone's dog barking itself hoarse at pigeons that didn't care. Life. Ordinary, infuriating life. I let out a breath and sat back in my chair, my shoulders cracking like old floorboards. I'd started this mess thinking I could write my way to an ending, some neat bow I could tie around my family's rot, and send it off like an unmarked package to a past address. But every time I tried to type the last line, I'd see Dad's hands trembling on his teacup, Mum's eyes darting away from mine, Evelyn's tight, manic grin. And beneath all of that, the truth that no version of this story, no matter how carefully worded, would make them different people. I heard the front door chime, the rusty bell that always rang a fraction too late to announce a customer properly. I snapped the laptop shut and stood, brushing imaginary dust off my skirt like it could hide the raw edges under my skin. Callum stood there, halfway inside, halfway out, like he hadn't decided whether the shop was a safe place or just another room where the truth would strangle him. "Nice sign," he said, nodding at the window. I raised an eyebrow. "You saw it yesterday." "Yeah, but it's different now. Sun's out." He stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. "Got you something?" I waited for a cheap pun, some joke about him owing me a bottle of wine or his rent money again. But instead, he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and shoved it into my hands. I unfolded it carefully, half expecting an oil-stained garage invoice. But it was a sketch. Rough, done in pencil, the lines faint but sure. Nokie bloom. Just that word, wrapped in vines and tiny flowers, drawn like a sign I'd want above my door. "You did this?" I asked, my voice catching somewhere between my chest and throat. He shrugged. "Mate's girl is a tattoo artist. I asked her to do something nice. Said you might want to drop the veil bit one day." I traced the lines with my thumb. "You think I should?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I think you should do whatever the hell you want. You've earned it." It wasn't a crown, or an apology, or a seat at the veil table they'd used to push me off the edge. But it was better. A small, hand-drawn sign from the brother I'd nearly lost to the same house that tried to bury me. I pinned it to the corkboard behind the till, right next to Lena's passive-aggressive note reminding me to order more daisies. "Tea?" I asked, reaching for the battered old kettle I kept hidden under the counter. He smirked. "If you make it like Mum does, I'm leaving. I'll put in extra sugar, just for you. ... We drank it standing up, mugs steaming between us, the shop's faint hum settling around us like a blanket we didn't want but couldn't put down yet. "You talked to her?" Callum asked. I didn't have to ask who he meant. "Mum. Always. Mum." "Not since the letter," he winced. "She means well." "She always means well," I said, more to myself than to him. "She just doesn't do well." Callum studied the dregs of his tea like they might spell out the answers. "Think you'll ever forgive her?" I twisted the string of my tea bag around my finger until it snapped. Forgiveness isn't the point anymore. He let that hang between us. The truth was, it wasn't about being the bigger person. It was about not letting her mistakes dictate every version of my name. When he finally left for work, I stood at the shop window, tracing the outline of asterisk veil and bloom backward with my fingertip. The sun caught on the letters, turning the V into a question mark. Dash 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 dot dot. I was halfway through restocking the roses when the door chime squeaked again. I didn't look up. I just rattled off my usual line. Back in a second, got half a dozen new stems to unwrap. Silence. A breath. A sound that tasted like déjà vu. Imogen. I froze, my hands still buried in the crinkled brown paper around the roses. I knew that voice. I'd heard it in my sleep for years. Soft when she wanted it to be, acid when she needed it to be sharper than any blade. I turned. Evelyn stood just inside the shop door, her hair scraped back into a low bun, her coat too thin for the chill. She looked smaller. Or maybe I was bigger now. Harder to push over. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, my voice careful, measured. Not the same girl who'd shrunk behind her at the dining table. She stepped forward. "I needed to see you." "For what?" I asked. "A victory lap?" Her laugh was brittle. "Does this look like victory to you?" I didn't answer. She glanced around the shop, at the buckets of freesias, the wilting tulips, the old ledger open on the counter with my scribbled notes and unfinished orders. She looked at me like I was a museum exhibit, something she used to own but couldn't explain to her friends anymore. "Mom's sick," she said. "She didn't want me to come, but I raised a hand. "Don't do that. Don't play the sympathy card." She bit her lip, and for a moment the mask slipped. The same way it had the night she'd stood at the foot of the stairs, watching Mum lie through her teeth while I held the DNA report like a holy text. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "Good," I said, "because you'd lose." She flinched, tiny, almost invisible, but I saw it. "I came to say—" The words tangled. I saw the frustration spark in her eyes, the way it always did when she couldn't bend the world into the shape she wanted. "You ruined everything," she said finally. "But maybe it needed to break." I barked out a laugh. Not cruel, just honest. "It was always broken, Evelyn. I just held up the mirror." She stepped closer. I didn't move. I let her see every line of my face, every scrap of the girl she'd tried so hard to erase. "I'm sorry," she said. 2 words, flat as paper. "For what?" I asked. "For all of it." I looked at her, really looked at her. Under the layers, under the voice she'd honed to cut glass, she was just a girl who'd been handed too much power by a mother who couldn't stand her own reflection. Just like me. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't even say thank you. I just nodded once. Enough to show I heard her. Enough to let it sit where it needed to. Dash 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 dot dot. She left without buying a single flower. The bell above the door rattled once, then fell silent. I sat on the stool behind the counter, my hands shaking around the old chipped mug of tea I hadn't finished. That night, I pulled down the sign. The next morning, I painted over Vale. I left Bloom. When customers asked why, I told them it was simpler that way. Easier to grow when you stop dragging old roots through new soil. Dash dash dash, dot dot. Next part begins exactly here. Imogen stepping into the final pieces of her story, no skipped moments. The truth finally hers to carry or plant wherever she wants. Easier to grow when you stop dragging old roots through new soil. The next morning, I stood outside the shop before dawn, the streetlights still flickering against the pale wash of sunrise. The window looked different now. Just Bloom in fresh white paint, the old swirl of gold gone. No veil, no inherited cage wrapped around my name like barbed wire. Just me, Imogen, and the flowers that had carried my shaking hands through nights I thought would never end. I pressed my palm to the glass, cold, solid, mine. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the smell of damp stems and cheap floor cleaner made my lungs ache in the best way. This place wasn't fancy. The paint peeled behind the fridge. The till jammed every third transaction. But it was honest. Every petal that fell, every leaf that browned at the edges, all of it was real. Not perfect. Not hidden under bright lights and hush-hush phone calls in the hallway. Just a garden, the way that little girl had said. I flicked on the lights. The hum settled around me, steady and warm. Bloom. ... Lena came in around 8, hair scraped into a messy bun, chewing on her headphone cord the way she always did when she was nervous. "Looks good," she said, nodding at the window. "Bloom, it suits you." I raised an eyebrow. "Did it suit me when it was Vale and Bloom?" She wrinkled her nose. "Didn't sound like you. Sounded like your mum's wedding china." I barked out a laugh. The kind that made my ribs stretch like they hadn't in years. "You're right." She dropped her bag on the counter, flicked on the tiny battered radio we kept by the till, and started arranging roses in the buckets like we hadn't spent half the winter drowning in other people's lies. In this place there was always work to do, even when the stories outside tried to sneak under the door. "Your brother called," she said after a minute. "The nice one." I arched an eyebrow. "Define nice," she grinned. "The one who brings you takeaway and doesn't lie about your entire existence." I laughed again, softer this time. "Callum?" "Yeah. Said he'd swing by later. ... Callum showed up after lunch, hair a mess, his new work shirt half-tucked, the sleeves already smudged with grease. "You're a walking cliché," I teased, tapping at the fresh stain near his elbow. He grinned, unbothered. "Occupational hazard." I leaned across the counter, lowering my voice. "How's Mum?" He winced. "About the same. She asked about you." I raised an eyebrow. Did she actually ask? Or did she say my name like a ghost that needs exorcising? He scratched the back of his neck. "Bit of both. Classic." He slid a paper bag across the counter. "Sandwiches, still warm. Eat. You look like you've been living off coffee and regret." I barked a laugh. "Been surviving on worse. ... We sat in the back room, shoulder to shoulder, chewing in comfortable silence while the fridge hummed and the air smelled like cut stems. He told me about the garage, how he'd dropped a wrench on his boss's foot the first day and thought he'd get sacked. How he kept the photo of his kid in his locker now. Not my mate's kid, asterisk, but my son. It was the first time I'd heard him say it without flinching. "You're gonna be all right, Cal," I said, poking him with my sandwich. "You know that, yeah?" He gave me that half smile that always looked like an apology and a promise at the same time. "Yeah. 'Cause you are. ... After he left, I pulled my laptop from under the counter. The same battered thing that had seen every version of my story typed out and deleted and typed again. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. Some stories don't need endings. But mine deserved a closing line. I wrote, "My name is Imogen Bloom. Not Vale. Not anybody's dirty secret or family cautionary tale. Just Imogen." I pulled my truth out like a rotten tooth. It bled. It stung. It healed. Dindoos. And when I typed the last period, I didn't feel the need to read it again. ... I printed it out. Not the whole thing. Just that last line. I pinned it to the corkboard next to Callum's sketch, the letter from Mum, and the photo Mason sent me of his girls in matching rain boots, both of them squinting into the sun like they couldn't believe it would stay. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know if Dad, the dad who'd raised me, would ever forgive me for tearing off the bandage he'd wrapped around our name. I didn't know if Mum would ever open her door and invite me in without her eyes darting to Evelyn for approval. I didn't know if Evelyn would ever speak to me again, and part of me hoped she wouldn't. Maybe some silences are worth keeping. But I knew this. The truth didn't own me anymore. It sat here, pinned to my wall, pressed into my flowers, tucked into the folds of the pages I might never let the world read. Mine. Dash 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 dot dot. I closed the shop early that night. I turned the open sign around, locked the door, and stood on the pavement staring at the window. Bloom. The streetlight caught on the fresh paint, turning it gold for half a second. I thought of Granddad's last words, the weight of his hand in mine. You're the only honest one in this nest of snakes. It didn't feel like a burden now, just a truth. An inheritance worth keeping. I walked home through the soft drizzle that always made the city smell new. When I got to my flat, Callum was waiting on the steps, 2 takeaway coffees balanced in one hand. Movie night? He asked. Depends, I said. Are we watching something where no one cries, or something that rips your guts out? He barked a laugh. Dealer's choice. Dash 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 dot dot. Inside, we curled up on my battered couch, feet tangled in the old blanket that smelled faintly of lilies and cheap laundry soap. He fell asleep halfway through the film, head tipping onto my shoulder, his quiet snores rattling against my collarbone. I didn't wake him. I just watched the credits roll, the screen flickering light and shadows across the ceiling like stars that couldn't decide if they wanted to stay. When it ended, I turned off the TV, nudged Callum awake, and we made mugs of tea in the tiny kitchen. My battered mug with the rose, his chipped one with the football team logo half scraped off. Do you think it was worth it? He asked, blowing across the surface of his tea. I didn't answer right away. I thought about Aaron's wheeze in that hospital bed. Mason's sad smile when he pressed my hand at the funeral. Mum's letter. 3 lines that sounded like a prayer she'd never say out loud. Evelyn's brittle apology in my shop. The door slamming behind her like a period at the end of a sentence I'd been too afraid to write. I looked at my brother. My real brother, the one who stayed. The one who knew how to let things go because he'd held them for too long. Yeah, I said finally. I do. Dash 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 dot dot. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed, listening to the city breathe outside my window. The low hum of traffic, a distant bark, the quiet thrum of the pipes behind the walls. It sounded like life. Messy. Incomplete. Mine. In the morning, I'd open the shop again. Wrap lilies for old women who'd bury them on graves. Tie daisies with bright ribbons for toddlers to crush in sticky fists. I'd breathe in the smell of soil and green stems and wet cardboard. And I'd remember what it felt like to stand in the middle of the battlefield with my truth clutched to my chest like a lifeline. Maybe one day I'd write the whole thing down, let someone else read it, let it grow roots somewhere new. But for now I'd let it rest here. In my shop, in my name, in the sound of my brother snoring on my couch, in the cold press of the window glass against my fingertips, in the way I'd learned, finally, that some family you choose, some family you lose, and some family you build from the seeds you thought would never bloom. Dash 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 dot dot. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Asterisk.